Brother Jihad Abdulmumit, who is also a member of the Black is Back Steering Committee. Jihad Abdulmumit is the co-chairperson for the National Jericho Amnesty Movement and is a former Black Panther, Black Liberation Army political prisoner.
Yes, Uhuru. Assalamu alaikum. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of Allah, most gracious, most merciful, my name is Jihad Abdulmumit. I am the chairperson of the National Jericho Movement. I just want to salute my comrades on the Black is Back Coalition for all of their stellar work in this movement, their longevity in the movement, their consistency. We want today to really get down to the nuts and bolts and utilizing these 2 days to really see what we, as attendees in this conference, and for those that are listening, that we will get this recording, what exactly we can do to support our freedom fighters that are in prison at this particular time. Before we go through this PowerPoint, I just want to make some connections that Chairman O'Malley made in the beginning for those that were able to hear it. It was that, like the Black Panther Party, we were able to form strategic coalitions to do the work because one organization cannot do it alone. So when we talk about movement in the real sense of the term, we have to be talking about the solidification and that solidarity and actual work. And I want to say the Black is Back Coalition is doing just that. We're picking up the baton that, as Brother Glenn said, has been dropped for almost 2 decades or more after the demolition of the Black Liberation Movement by the counterintelligence program. But now that baton is being picked up. And I want to say, sisters and brothers, that any movement that professes to champion the human rights of poor and oppressed people, any movement that professes to challenge and combat police violence against our people, any movement as we see today that is trying to bring radical changes to society that does not incorporate at the top of the list the freedom of freedom fighters that have went before them is hypocritical. And that hypocrisy is not necessarily by design. It is through our own ignorance. And it's ironic that today that we have cell phones and technology to be able to have access to this information, where back in the 60s, in 1966, when the Black Panther Party was established, we didn't have these things and the formation of movements was stronger. So we need to really get up to speed on what we're doing and avail ourselves to the mediums that we have, educate ourselves. Many of the Panther comrades, when we joined, myself, Mumia, Ashanti, Austin, many, many more, Cisco Torres, Chongo Munjes, all of us we were teenagers. We were teenagers. We didn't have somebody with gray in their hair leading us along, trying and beg us to see what our history was. We made it a point to find out. Now we have this device here, an iPhone, an Android, find out your history and who we are and what needs to be done. That's my challenge to you. So if we can show that slide up there, Brother Timba. I just want to make a point that when we talk about George Floyd, I want to make a historical reference to the fact that back in 1968, April the 6th, one of the first Panthers that was slain by the police was a brother named Robert James Hutton, also known as Little Bobby Hutton. So these police killings of our warriors and soldiers we have to remember these things. It's not just George Floyd, it's historical and it's been going on. It's not just the capturing of this to see what they're doing to our people on the cell phone, because you can look in any history book, John Hope Franklin, Lerone Bennett, any history book. Back in the day, they have dozens of pictures of us hanging from trees, what they did to us for the cell phone phenomenon and catching it on camera. We've been knowing what's happening and we have to respond to that. So next slide. So I want to go through some of the freedom fighters on the Jericho website. And for anybody that's listening, that'll be www.jericho.com. Can I get the next slide, please? And there's a movement with the goal of defending, representing and freeing our captive soldiers. That is the exact goal of the amnesty movement that was started in 1998 by Jihad Abdulmumit, still incarcerated, almost at 50 years in prison now, and by the late Safu Bukari and Herman Ferguson. Next slide. And as we go through these pictures, I want to make, next slide, I want to make some connections. You can see there that there's so many people involved. So let's talk about Brother Romaine Chip Fitzgerald, one of the longest held political prisoners. Do you know him? If not, then you need to go to our website and know him. We need to, everybody listening needs to adopt at least one political prisoner. And what does that adoption mean? That means you will write him, that you mean you will send him commissary money, that you mean that you will check on his welfare and his well-being. If he's gone to the parole board, that you position yourself to write letters in support of this prisoner, that you put him on your, or her on your Facebook page, so that you'll do just that much, even if it's just the press of a button on your computer to keep this brother's welfare safe and sound. Next slide. Next slide. Some of these captives have been freed by the efforts of Jericho and many, many organizations. Next slide. Ed Poindexter, one of the Omaha Two, and Brother Mondo Langa had passed away in prison a couple of years ago. These two brothers were incarcerated on some bogus, fictitious charges. There was a local counterintelligence contrivance there. Still needs your help. Take note of that address there. Go to our website to see who he is. Next slide. Next slide. That's Mondo, who passed away. Next slide. This is Angela Davis, co-defendant on a Marin County shootout, and he was incarcerated 6 years even before that. So do the math. Do the math. When you're incarcerated from the early 60s to now, how long do you think this political prisoner has been in prison? Do you know him? What is his mental state of mind? What is his well-being? We need to capture the address, write him, send him money, and see what support. Even if he dies in prison, at least he'll know that his efforts and sacrifice in the movement have not been in vain, and that people are upholding his legacy and his well-being as long as he remains alive. Next slide. Hugo Pinnell, in the segregation unit for so long, when he was finally released out in the yard, he was assassinated, which means how we have to really be on top of supporting our prisoners, so that the prison authorities know that these individuals are supported by the community, and you just cannot viciously assassinate them on a prison yard. Next slide. When Glenn Ford talked about when he was doing the roll call on the political prisoners a while ago, he mentioned the VI5. Now there are 3 brothers left, Merrill Smith or Malik Smith, Brother Abdul Aziz, and Hanif Shabazz Bey. They're incarcerated in a place called Citrus County Jail in Florida. They need your support. We have an active campaign going on for them right now, trying to get them to go to the parole board. Other than that, they will have to do 80 years minimum in prison, which means that their release dates will be 2054. We need to acknowledge them and recognize their sacrifice to the movement. They need your help. They need your letters. They need your support. Next slide. Yes, indeed. Jalil Muttaqim, captured in 1971, Black Panther, Black Liberation Army, and co-founder of the National Jericho Movement, gone up from the parole board next month. He has the opportunity to be free. We need to be in tune with the Jericho Movement and the Black is Back Coalition to see what action steps we can take as he goes to the parole board. If you want to hear our ironic thing about the deficiencies of our movement and how important it is for us to be on task. Jalil filed a compassionate release and was ordered immediately released by a white judge. The person that kept him in jail was a Black elected Attorney General for the state of New York. The white judge ordering him released immediately. The Black Attorney General saying, no, don't let this brother be released, and prevailing. Well, he just had what is called a hearing on appeal denial recently, and the same judge ordered him a new parole hearing. So what is this saying about our strength of our movement? We have to put pressure, as Brother Ralph said, on these officials, get them out of office, as Diop said, move them out on a local level so that we won't have to be going through these situations without comrades in prison. Next slide. Russell Maroon Schultz in very bad health condition. When we look at Russell Maroon Schultz, we look at a true warrior for our people. Maroon Schultz in prison, he's been in segregation for decades. Now he's out. Now he has life-threatening illnesses. He needs your support. He needs your support. Tomorrow, hopefully we'll have his son, Russell Schultz Jr., talking about his experiences with his father. Next slide. Fred Muhammad Burton, incarcerated in the state of Pennsylvania. We just recently established a Philadelphia chapter of Jericho to represent those many political prisoners in the state of Pennsylvania. These are names that you may not be familiar with. And these are our warriors. It's not just the famous ones, it's all these soldiers we need to really get in tune with. Capture the name, capture the address, send these comrades your support. Next slide. Albert Woodfox, formerly political prison supported by Jericho. He was part of the Angola 3. And we know that look how long he stayed in the segregation unit. So now I want you to, each and every one of you to go into your bathroom and lock yourself in there for 30 years. And I'm being maybe facetious about it, but do that. And then you see the pain and suffering that we sacrifice by our efforts in the movement. Support these brothers. He's home now. Next slide. Jojo Bowen. This is my hero. Assassinated the warden and associate warden. I don't know what you may think about that, but when you pick up a book of Nat Turner, ask yourself, do you see a hero or do you see a criminal? When you look at Jojo, do you see a hero or do you see a criminal? So now what is it when we take the lives of the slave master? Just real talk. These brothers need to be free. You know that in many countries, Germany and European countries, those brothers and sisters that picked up weapons and fought against the government, they're free now. The United States is holding our captives for decades and decades and decades. And we have to break this train here. And the only way we can do it is by having a powerful people's movement to free all political prisoners, including those that picked up weapons and fought for our people. We should be proud of them, not scared of them. We should be proud of them and supporting them, not afraid of attaching our name to Jojo Bowen. Next slide. As Chairman O'Malley and Brother Glenn Ford mentioned, even our prisoners of war that are in exile, we will have a little clip from Hukuya tomorrow, which is Assata Shakur's daughter. But how many of you have a picture of Assata Shakur on your refrigerator? How many of you have a picture of Assata Shakur on your refrigerator? Then I would ask how many of you know Sundiata Acoli, her co-defendant, 83 years old, in prison for decades. So we need to give support to these individuals, and we need to make sure that Assata Shakur is totally protected at all times. Next slide. I know we got to move on this a little quicker. There he is. Sundiata Acoli, U.S. political prisoner. That's his address. He needs full support, full support. He has the opportunity to get out. The attorney is asking for $30,000. So there's a money value to this. You know, sisters and brothers, it's funny how a lot of this is really boiled down when it comes to our freedom fighters to how much money we have to pay to a lawyer, because a lawyer is not going to do this for free. So what would it be if Sundiata dies in prison because we couldn't get a couple of $1,000s that's needed? So we need to be in tune with this. We're not busting down the doors by mass demonstrations. How are you going to get these sisters and brothers out of prison? So now we have to almost surgically remove them, get to them so that their cases can be brought before the parole board or appeals to governors, people that we didn't vote for or anything like that, but now we have to be and begging them, you know, to release our freedom fighters. This is a serious contradiction in the movement that has to be rectified. Next slide. Larry Hoover. And another slide coming up will be Imam Malik, Larry Jeff Ford. So these two brothers had gang leadership in Chicago. They've been politicized in prison, and they're in prison so long underneath the ground in Colorado only because of their potential influence. And like Glenn said, it's like when you look at what a person potentially can do, then you have to neutralize them. Even when Glenn Ford utilized the example of Martin Luther King, assassinated for what he was going to. What was his thinking going to? Anti-imperialist. It went from where he was as a minister to a revolutionary. So the powers that be recognize this evolutionary transformation is happening. And so Larry Hoover and Jeff Ford will be in prison forever because of the potential they can wage, they can level in their own communities. So activists in the streets need to be aware of this too, because those activists, to use that word, are becoming revolutionaries. So it's the powers that be, you can believe that they have already situated themselves to neutralize it, co-opt that, and make it all a capitalist venture. Next slide. Baranza Bowers, he got paroled over a decade ago, and the Attorney General stepped in and said he can't go. This is all very unprecedented. This brother has miraculous resilience and strength, and you need to capture his name and address and send him commissary, letters of love and support, so that whatever his situation is, you uphold his legacy. That's what it's all about. Bottom line, upholding the legacy so that we will understand that what these sisters and brothers stood for, what they stood for, same issues that we're protesting in the street today. Next slide. Herman Bell, recently released from prison. And you know what the irony of it is, so many people was able to embrace Herman while he was in prison. Now that he's out, the state has him isolated. You can't even be in contact with him. This nonsense has to stop, sisters and brothers. And the only way they can stop is by building a movement where we have the strength to level demands exactly how we want to be treated as a people. This has to stop. Now he's home. I myself and any other Panther can't even see our comrade. When he was in prison, we can go visit him. Now we're home, we can't see him. That's his constraint. So there, you're home, but you will be on this plantation forever. Next slide. Robert Seth Hayes passed away last year, December 26th. And while he was in prison, New York, Jericho, under the leadership of Ann Lamb, and he had diabetes real bad every day. For a decade, we have to have medical support and intervention to keep him alive while in prison. You know, we thank Allah much that he was able to come home and live for a year or so before he passed away. So this is the importance of getting our sisters and brothers out. They're getting older. They need our help. Medical issues. You have medical issues? You 70? You 80 years old? You have medical issues. So did Robert Seth Hayes, and he's passed away now. Going to the ancestors. Next slide.
Poor Brother Jihad, you have 2 more minutes.
Okay. All right. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. Okay, we're going to stop with Brother Mal Min. This is a name that I'm quite sure the majority of you don't know. A Muslim brother is definitely a victim of the counterintelligence program. All of these sisters and brothers that you're seeing on this slide, and we'll make this available further on in the presentation, exactly who they are. Thanking Glenn Ford for the roll call that he did on some of them. I know time is a factor, you know, in making sure that we know who they are, but you can access all of their information on the www.thejerichomovement.com. And we appreciate the Black is Back Coalition informing this this 2-day conference so that we can learn who they are. My message at this portion, I know we have time later on for answers and questions from the attendees, but we have to connect our political prisoners, our freedom fighters from days gone by to the movements now. Each and every one of these individuals represented community development, healthcare for our community. When we talk about Dr. Matula Shakur, he was an acupuncturist. You know, that's talking about healing our communities, the defense of our community, as Brother Diop is saying. These are brothers and sisters that stood there in the vanguard positions. Now they are suffering in prison, longevity, old age. Malmin Kabir has about, I think Sister Ann Lamb told me, New York Jericho told me, 7% of lung capacity. 7% of lung capacity. That means he has to be on an oxygen tank all of the time. So we're going to end with this presentation right here. And when we come back with questions and answers, we'll be able to explore more how we can help. The last word I want to say, Sister Elikia, is that the whole point of representing political prisoners is to see how we can get them out. This is not just a discussion about who they are, as Chairman O'Malley. This is an action program. Black is Back Coalition is an action program. We're through this conference, we wanted to take it a couple of steps further with what we can do to actually free our political prisoners. Salute to everybody, all power to the people.